Hey folks, this is Lindsay Martinez. I'm the host, one of the hosts of our Conservation Relevancy Community site. And today we're visiting with Michelle Wilson from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. She is coordinating Relevancy Roadmap pilot efforts in Iowa, and we'll be talking about that today. Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Wilson. I'm with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. I actually work with the Conservation and Recreation Division, which supports and represents all of the bureaus within our agency that are focused on conservation activities and recreation, parks, forests, wildlife, law enforcement, and fisheries. So I kind of work with all of the bureaus, and this is one of the projects that I'm working right now with our Wildlife Bureau.
Excellent, thank you. So we've got about 6 states doing pilot efforts on the Relevancy Roadmap. Iowa is one of them. Can you explain a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, we were approached, or I was approached a couple of years ago to look at our bird conservation areas. We have a number of BCAs, is what we call them, across the state of Iowa. And the desire was to try to increase more activity, and by more activity, that may be current birders using the areas more frequently, or it may be bringing new birders into the areas to use them more often. These areas are very unique in our state. I'm sure every state has unique areas like this, where we might have a large designated area as a bird conservation area, but the lands within that designated area may be private lands, private landowners, state lands, federal lands, or county conservation boards, because Iowa is unique in that we have 99 county conservation boards across our state. So lots of different partners, but we want to get more people, especially on the public lands there. So that's what we're really pushing to, is trying to figure out who our birders are, what they might be doing, and get them to use these. The public lands are also huntable lands. So we also have that kind of in the spring, that kind of cross opportunity with turkey hunters out there at the same time that birders are, because those two activities tend to happen at the same time, as well as in the fall, where we have dove season potentially on some of those areas at the same time when we're having fall migration. So it's also looking at somewhat those mixed opportunities for those areas too.
Very cool, that sounds awesome. Can you tell us exactly how you are implementing the Relevancy Roadmap? What sections are you using from there?
So we're really focusing on learning about our customers. I think that we're all really also recreational users in these fields. A number of the team that I'm working with are really into birding, or I'm an outdoor photographer myself. And sometimes when you're in the field and you're a participant, you kind of make assumptions, and you make assumptions that when I'm doing things for outdoor photography, or some of my teammates who are out birding, that all the other birders may think or do the same thing, and that's not the truth. So we make assumptions, and so that we try to do activities as an agency on those kind of based assumptions. So we have looked at our statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan survey. I'm also the outdoor recreation plan coordinator for our agency. So I do the SCORP plan every 5 years, which is a requirement in National Park Service. And we ask birders questions in that. We ask outdoor photographers questions in that, but we've never pulled back the data to really look at those. So we're looking at that data. We have what we call our bird conservation area advisory group. New birders, experienced birders, males, females, college age students, older, and parents who really don't have that much of an interest in birding, but their kids do. And so we have a number of people in this advisory group that we've really been saying, here's what we think, or here's what we know. Now you tell us what the truth is. And it's not truth as in we're lying, but that's that assumption piece, right? We're making assumptions, they're telling us what truth is. And then we have to figure out where that gap is between that. They've been really, really helpful for us. Even in the pandemic, we have given them some online stuff to work on, looking at our social media and our website options. And we've had them all together on Zoom and had some great conversations on Zoom. So even though we can't physically be together, they've really done a big help moving us forward to figure out what it is and where we need to meet our participants.
That sounds like some great social science research, and I know that's a huge part of the roadmap, so people will be excited to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. The firm that did the SCORP survey, responsive management, they did a kind of a report and boiled everything down for us, and they are now going back out and doing some very specific zip code surveys, because one of the areas that was identified in our SCORP was urban audiences was a big opportunity for us. So we've given them a bunch of zip codes because we had some money in the Wildlife Management Institute grant that we can't use now for physical type things. So we're going and getting zip code data to even further dive into our social science pieces to figure out how we can work with a bird conservation area that's within 30 miles of Des Moines, which is our headquarters and also one of the bigger towns in our state. So we're diving even farther deeper into the social science world. So we're excited to see what that's going to come out in the next month.
Very cool. Yeah, and responsive management sounds like an interesting group for people to look into.
Yes.
Would you want to share with us sort of your biggest success or accomplishment in your eyes so far from the pilot, and also something that's been challenging so far?
I think the biggest challenge so far was just learning how to navigate the communication factors when we couldn't physically get together to do things. Number one, we didn't have Zoom at the start of the pandemic. So, just getting our department to have Zoom was a big one because I wanted the ability to have all of the features, the whiteboard features, to take notes and facilitate a conversation just as if I would in person. So it took us months to get that in place, and literally 3 months to get a Zoom account. So we had to delay things a lot longer than what we had hoped. But I do believe that one of our biggest accomplishments is every single person we invited to the Bird Conservation Area Advisory Group on August 25th participated in our meeting. And it was a 2.5-hour Zoom session, and all of them fully participated, and are excited about participating again with us for fulfilling more gaps and more knowledge that we need. So yes, those were big hurdles to come by because it totally took us off base of where we thought we were going to be and the timeline of where we wanted to be. But, I don't think that anybody was less engaged during a Zoom session than they would have been in a face-to-face meeting. I really believe that they were all just as engaged as we would have hoped for them to be.
Yeah, I know everyone is struggling with the pandemic, but I'm so glad that you guys got good participation. Hopefully that can be a little bit of an inspiration for others.
Yeah, and every single invited person, we had one we had to do ahead of time because it was a college student and she had just recently gotten her college courses changed on her. So we had to do her early, but only 3 or 4 hours early. So we did her the same day. We just did her early and went through everything. And then one gentleman that we did the week afterwards, but every single one of them participated. And so we were really, really excited about that.
Awesome, that's great to hear. One more question for you is, if you had to give one bit of advice or suggestion to other people, not necessarily pilot state folks, but people who want to implement the relevancy roadmap, what would you tell them?
I think that, and I've had conversations with some other states. There's a lot of data from a recreation, especially if you're looking at non-traditional users. Each state, if they are getting Land and Water Conservation Fund dollars, they have a state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. There's a lot of data. Almost all of the states are going out and getting surveys of their publics for that plan. And so I think it's a great place to start because you'd actually be quite surprised at how much data, when you start pulling things apart, how much data is really there about these non-traditional users that are using the same wildlife spaces that hunters and or anglers have been using. So I think that if you start there and really pair up with those others, we worked really hard in our agency to take the Wildlife Action Plan through the Fish and Wildlife Service, the SCORP plan through the National Park Service, and right now we're working on our third one, which is our Forest Today plan, which is through the National Forests. Melding them all together so that we kind of go down a road together. And I think that we are starting to look and think bigger because we're taking all of those plans and pulling them together and looking at all of the different data that's there, when in the past we've kind of been doing it in our own little silos and it's probably not been as effective. So I think that there's a lot of data for non-traditional users in the SCORP plan and SCORP plots. So if you aren't currently working with that part of your agency or in your state, you might want to reach out to them and just see what data is out there, because I think there's a treasure trove waiting for you of some places to start.
Awesome. That sounds like great advice. So lots of information out there. You can bring it in from different places. And hopefully there's lots for people to use.
Yep.
Thank you for that suggestion. People
no problem.
And thank you so much for your time here today and telling us a little bit about Iowa. I think we'll keep up with you as we go and keep updated about your pilot work on bird conservation.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.